The story of Elijah from the perspective of the ravens. We were a pair of ravens, soaring through the skies, searching for food and building nests in the trees. Life was a constant quest for survival, finding sustenance wherever we could. Little did we know that our lives were about to intersect with the story of a man named Elijah. One day, as we flew over a drought-stricken land, we noticed a figure sitting by a brook. It was Elijah, a prophet of God. He had been instructed by the Lord to hide in this desolate place, away from the wrath of King Ahab. We watched from a distance, intrigued by this solitary man and his unwavering faith in God. As the days went by, the brook gradually dried up, leaving Elijah without a source of water. We sensed his desperation and his reliance on God's provision. That's when something extraordinary happened. The Lord commanded us, the ravens, to bring food to Elijah. With obedient hearts, we took flight and scoured the land for scraps of bread and meat. We collected whatever we could find and carried it in our beaks, guided by an unseen force. We flew directly to Elijah, dropping the food before him. It was a miraculous provision in the midst of scarcity. Day after day, we faithfully brought sustenance to Elijah, ensuring that he had enough to eat and drink. It was an unusual task for us, but we recognized that we were playing a vital role in God's plan. We became instruments of his provision and witnesses to his faithfulness. Through our encounters with Elijah, we observed his unwavering faith in God. Despite the challenging circumstances, he trusted that God would provide for his needs. His reliance on the Lord's provision served as a powerful reminder to us of the importance of faith and trust in times of adversity. As time passed, the drought eventually came to an end, and Elijah's journey continued. We watched as he performed great miracles and confronted the false prophets of Baal. His faithfulness and boldness inspired us, and we marveled at the ways in which God worked through him. Our encounter with Elijah taught us valuable lessons. We learned that God can use even the most unlikely creatures to fulfill his purposes. We witnessed firsthand the power of God's provision and the importance of unwavering faith. And we saw that God is faithful to his promises, even in the midst of challenging circumstances. Though our time with Elijah was brief, the impact of that encounter will forever remain with us. We continue to soar through the skies, knowing that God's provision extends to all creatures, great and small. We carry the story of Elijah in our wings, a testament to the faithfulness of our Creator. The story of Elijah and the ravens offers several important lessons. 1. The story demonstrates that God can provide for his people in unexpected and unconventional ways. He used ravens, typically seen as unclean birds, to bring food to Elijah. This reminds us that God's provision is not limited to our expectations or traditional means. He can use any means necessary to meet our needs. 2. Elijah's unwavering trust in God's faithfulness is evident throughout the story. Despite the challenging circumstances of the drought, Elijah relied on God's promise to provide for him. This teaches us the importance of trusting in God's faithfulness, even when we face difficulties or uncertainty. It encourages us to have faith in God's promises and rely on him in all circumstances. 3. The ravens in the story demonstrated obedience to God's command to bring food to Elijah. They faithfully carried out their role in God's plan. This emphasizes the importance of obedience to God's instructions and prompts us to be open to how God may use us to fulfill his purposes. 4. The story highlights God's care and provision for his people. Despite the drought, God ensured that Elijah had food to sustain him. This reminds us that God is concerned about our well-being and will provide for our needs. It encourages us to trust in his provision and care, knowing that he is attentive to our circumstances. 5. The story underscores God's sovereignty and control over all creation. He directed the behavior of the ravens, using them as a means of provision for Elijah. This teaches us that God has power and authority over nature and can utilize it for His purposes. It reminds us of His sovereignty and prompts us to trust in His control over our lives. 6. Elijah's encounter with the ravens reflects God's faithfulness during desolate times. Despite the scarcity of resources, God provided for Elijah's needs. This reminds us that even in the midst of challenging circumstances, God remains faithful and will sustain us. It encourages us to place our trust in Him during times of scarcity or difficulty.